to the webinar for week 5. And the topic for today's webinar is improving our listening. Improving our listening, tips and advice to help make you feel a bit more confident when we're listening, because sometimes it's quite difficult, and when we don't know what we can do to improve, that isn't very helpful. So we look at some different resources that we can use, and also some practical things that you can do yourself to improve listening ability. Okay, but first of all, what online resources do you know about, and how do they work? So maybe you could suggest some. Maybe you could write them in the chat. Yeah, podcasts, audiobooks, yeah, BBC Radio, yeah, TED Talks, British Council apps, very good. Movies, yeah, definitely. And if they're enjoyable, then it might not seem like a lot of work also. Yeah, what about applications? So someone, Gabriela, you mentioned the British Council apps. Any other applications you guys can think of that you've used to help you with your listening?
Yeah, the British Council apps. I use different apps from British Council. Well, specific for speaking, for listen, pronunciation, the phonetic symbols.
Oh yeah, that can be really helpful, because sometimes we don't know how to pronounce something. We can if we know how to read phonetic symbols, then that can help us look for the correct pronunciation. Yeah, and there are some listening options there too. Yeah, so yeah, learn English skills. Gabriela mentioned that before also. Yeah, so we're going to talk about some of these options. Lyrics training. Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, has anybody else used lyrics training?
Yes, I use.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And Nayeli, as you mentioned lyrics training, would you mind explaining how that works? If that's okay.
Hi, everyone. Actually, I just use this lyrics training app, but in the web. So you could look for the song that you want, and you have to fill up the blanks, and it has like different levels. So depending on the level, it's the amount of blanks that you have to fill.
So it's kind of works like a game. So it's challenging.
I tried the basic and intermediate level.
Okay. So that sounds like a fun way. It sounds like a challenge. Yeah. So that's a good option also. It's quite fun to listen to music, and something like that can help your listening too. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's have a look at some more resources that we can use. Let me share my screen again. So some of these that were mentioned here, I've also got here. So we've got things like the British Council Learn English podcasts. So there are various British Council apps. Starting from the left, TED Talks. So that's quite a good resource as well. On YouTube, they talk about different topics. And in a few moments, I'll put in the chat some other YouTube sites that might be interesting as well. But yeah, there's loads of stuff on YouTube. You've got the British Council Learn English applications. There's this one, podcasts, talking about different topics. And there's also another one, BBC 6 Minute English. And there are loads of different podcasts there too. I'll show you what it looks like in a second. Lyrics training apps, application. So yeah, listening to music and doing various challenges. Radio stations, of course, in the United Kingdom, but also in different countries. You know, that could be United States, Canada, or Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. So I put those countries there because they've got different accents that might not be so common, and that might be a good challenge for you guys to listen to some less common English accents. Sorry. There's also some if you're like interested in doing exams, formal examinations, there's a good resource for IELTS, Cambridge Advanced, First Certificate. And even if you're not thinking about doing an exam, the listenings are quite challenging. So it's another way to practice, of course. And it's a bit more focused as well. You know, it's like an exam level listening exercise. So I'll tell you about those more in a second. I'll put the links in the chat. But coming back to lyrics training and 6-minute English. So on the left, you can see 6-minute English. So that's what it looks like. And that gives you an idea of the different kinds of topics you can listen to. So loads of different big things, from jellyfish to more things relevant for online life, like online fraud, deeper questions like loneliness, punctuality. So that could be quite interesting. And there's an image from lyrics training, a screenshot. So when you see it on your screen, you can download it to your phone, or you can do it on a computer. And as Nelly said, you've got points there, and there are various levels. And there are these, like, just to give you an idea of the application, there are loads of apps as well from the British Council. So we mentioned the podcast one, but there are others too, for listening, but also for other areas of English. You know, YouTube, it really depends on what you're interested in. I put some stuff there which might be more like general interest, but if there's other things that you're interested in, then listen to it in English. It's a good way to practice, and it's probably going to be interesting for you because it's what you're interested in. So it's important also, I think, to find interesting content. But yeah, there are thousands of YouTube channels, right? So you could pick anything. But yeah, the radio stations, they're from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and those websites and links to the other things that we mentioned. Coming back to the topic of improving listening.
Yes.
So you've got two opinions here. What do you think about those? Do you agree with them?
More or less.
More or less?
Not at all.
Not at all? Why not? For those of you who think not at all.
I think that we can improve by practicing, and also I think there are also strategies when listening to get the information that is relevant.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I think, like many things, practice makes perfect. So the more you practice, generally the better you'll become, right? Because you'll learn strategies automatically when you're practicing too. You'll learn by yourself. And so for lots of things, practice is always really important. But yeah, there are things that we can do, definitely. So some tips here, some more practical things that you can do. So one thing that could be quite difficult, but I think really valuable, is instead of listening to an audio from the middle, try to jump straight in occasionally. Instead of listening from the start, try to jump straight in from the middle. So that'll be really, really challenging. But the reason is that it can develop your speed in switching on to the topic. Because a lot of the audio that we listen to in class or when you're doing listening practice, you're going to be listening from the beginning, right? And sometimes in real life, that doesn't happen. Sometimes you come straight into the middle of a conversation and you have to quickly catch the main idea. So that might be something that you could practice doing. Maybe select an audio or select a video, a YouTube video talking about something. And you're going to know the main topic, but maybe start from the beginning and try to find the main idea as fast as you can. It will be very, very challenging, but it will develop your ability to understand from clues. So that's something different that you can do, because most of the time when we practice listening, start from the middle of the video, start from the beginning of the video, start from the beginning of the audio. But try that one out. Another tip, take dictations. So this is also very challenging, and you've got to be able to write quickly. But what you could do is listen to a section, write down as much as you can, word for word if possible, then pause, give yourself some time, then play again, write down what you hear word for word, and so on. So taking dictations is something that's quite challenging. But that challenge is really good for your listening ability as well. Something else that is good, I think, note down the main ideas as you hear them in your own words. So maybe when you're listening, you've got a piece of paper next to you and a pen, just summarize what is said in each section. And the next one, if you have an important work call in English, it's not always possible, but if you can try to predict what you think they will tell you before you listen, that might help. Because in general, if you predict before you listen, your performance increases. So this is something that they teach in exams too. For certain sections of IELTS and Cambridge exams, if you can predict those sections, you're generally going to increase your listening performance. This isn't always possible, because I think a lot of the time, if you're taking work calls in English, and that's why you want to practice your listening for work, maybe, if you're taking these calls, they might be spontaneous. You might not have time to prepare, but sometimes we also know that we have meetings. Tomorrow I have this meeting, or tomorrow I'm going to speak to this person. So try to predict what they will tell you. You might not be right, but that doesn't matter. The act of predicting helps a lot and improves listening performance. Whether you were correct or not, just predicting helps a lot. And I'll explain a bit more why in a few moments. Also, I think not only words when you're listening, but paying attention to stress, intonation, overall tone of the speaker. Does the speaker sound positive? Do they sound negative? Do they sound like they're complaining? So not just listening to words, but listening between the lines, because a lot of what is transmitted isn't always in direct words, right? So speakers might not be direct in what they're saying. This is something that can also help you identify main ideas, main opinions and attitudes also. So it could be that you're watching a news report or a documentary and someone is speaking, and you could try to guess their attitude. Is this speaker skeptical? Is this speaker trying to convince the other person? And a few of you also mentioned in the chat a few moments ago, movies. So movies, series, that's really good. Listening without subtitles can be very challenging, but very helpful. But also, I think watching with subtitles can be helpful because you could maybe try to listen and watch a movie or a series and check the translations that come up. So maybe you put your subtitles to Spanish, and then you could play the role of translator or someone that is checking the translations. So even if the subtitles are in Spanish, just listen to certain sections and, you know, was what they were saying in English correctly translated into Spanish? That can be quite challenging as well, but something else that might help your listening comprehension too. So some different ideas there, but I've designed them to try to be as practical as possible, because you know, when you're practicing outside of class, maybe we don't have a lot of time. So these things, you know, if you set aside some time for listening practice, these things won't take that long. It's not a lot of extra work. It's more to do with the way you approach the listening, right? So maybe next time, when instead of listening just to get the main idea, maybe you can try dictating a 1-minute section, or maybe you could, instead of starting from the beginning, you could of your favorite podcast, you could start from the middle, which will be very challenging. But I think those things are different ways of practicing listening that we don't normally do. So there are some ideas there. But I mentioned this one, right? Prediction. Any ideas on why that could improve listening performance?
No, Ben, I'd just like to ask if we like put attention, in the main verbs, right, when listening.
The main verbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, action words, so they might be important words.
Maybe nouns. Well, if it's about person or animals, the subject.
Yeah, nouns. Yeah, I mean, it depends what you're talking about, right? If you're giving instructions, then the important words will probably be verbs, won't they? But also nouns. So that could be something, but it might not be important words though. That's the problem. So I don't think it will be automatically the most important words. A lot of them could be. Well, this is a difficult question, and I'll come back to some questions in a few moments. But the question that I asked, like, why is this? Why does prediction improve listening performance? Is really a difficult one. But basically, when you predict, you have a reason or an extra reason for listening, right? So a lot of the times we just listen to get the main idea, but when we're predicting, we have an extra reason for listening. And also, when we listen to check, we tend to listen a bit more. We tend to pay a little bit more attention. So this is an example of active listening. So the idea of active listening is that you're interacting with audio in some way, and that's really a strong tool for improving comprehension. And there are some things that you can do here, apart from predicting and then listening to see if you're correct. So we've got it here, pre-listening, predict content. So what you could do is maybe pretend, or maybe intend to watch a video on YouTube or some other audio, right, a podcast. So just from the title, try to think about what will be talked about. Okay, so the title says this, I think they're going to talk about this, and they will mention this. And then what you can do is check to see if you were right, and then correct if necessary. So if you were wrong, what did they really talk about? So that's something relatively simple you can do. Another thing that you can do while listening is, once you've started and you've listened to some sections, pause and then predict what will be mentioned next. So, they talked about this and they talked about that. So I think they are going to talk about this next. And then what you can do is play the audio and check to see if you're correct. That's something else that you could do. And I mentioned this before as well. Paraphrase what you hear in your own words while listening. So summarizing it at different stages. Obviously, if it's a long audio, that will be a lot, but maybe you could take certain sections, right? So maybe the first minute and then minute 3 and minute 5. So you can do this in writing in form of notes, or you can even summarize out loud, like pause the audio and then say to yourself a summary of what was said. So you're kind of translating into your own English. And to do that, of course, you need to listen really carefully to what's said. You might not be correct. You might not translate it exactly as it is, but it still forces you to listen a bit more deeply. And something else that could be good as well, as when you're listening, you could try to, at certain sections, pause and write questions for things that you would like to know more about. So, they probably won't answer those same questions. Some of them they might. Some of your questions that you have might not be answered. So if you're watching a documentary on how chocolate is produced, and maybe you pause at a certain section and you might ask yourself, how much does it cost? And they might mention that later, but it's a good way of interacting with the listening. And where this also works well is if you're listening to an interview in English, you could play the role of the interviewee, okay? So you could pretend that you are the person being interviewed, and when you're playing the video, pause after the questions and then answer them. And then after that, you can play and you can see if the famous person or the interviewee answered the question in the same way. So that's another way that you can improve listening, active listening. So coming back to this, you're not just receiving the audio, you're interacting with it. Even if it's on your own, it's not very natural, but it's something that could help you to improve listening, improve certain strategies for listening as well. So there are some tips there, and I think the active listening tips, they're slightly different. I think you can definitely do them on your own. It might feel a bit weird, listening or watching an interview and then playing the role of the interviewee, but it might be something different or fun. And I think it will force you to listen more deeply and listen more attentively. And that's the idea of active listening. So some tips there, but what I'd like to do now for the last 15 minutes is hand it over to you for some questions. So we'll have like a Q&A. So if anyone has any questions about improving your listening, doing this or doing that, feel free to ask. Yes, Ara.
Ben, I have a question. What about different accents? I mean, sometimes for me, it's easy to understand. I don't know people from USA, but sometimes when I'm hearing people from London or other accent, I almost don't understand anything. So what could be like a tool or a tip in order to tune the ear for listening different accents?
I think the radio stations could be good. the reason for that is a lot of people say that when they work for an organization and they start to deal with customers from certain countries, they often say that after a few years they become more used to the accent, and that's because of exposure. They're not doing anything; they're just listening to those accents frequently. So I think that's something that could help as well, like listening to different radio stations from. I put some suggestions in the chat also. Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, those different accents would help. I think just listening to them, because I think a lot of the problems of listening to accents can be overcome with a bit more exposure to them, right? They probably sound weird because they're not so common to hear. We watch movies all the time on Netflix and Amazon or whatever. And so we hear American English a lot, don't we? But we don't hear South African English. So I'll put those in the chat again, like those radio stations. But that could be good. Maybe like a 20-minute session per week, or maybe if you've got time, longer. But I think first of all, exposure will help. More exposure. And then after that, what you could do is try some of the active listening techniques that we talked about, or things like dictations and things like that.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question, Ben.
Yeah.
What do you suggest in order to have, like, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes every day practice, or something very, very fast, like everyday routine in order to improve listening? For example, something very easy to do, I don't know, in little slots. What do you suggest?
I would suggest that you try something like a podcast. So something from British Council Learn English podcast or the BBC 6-Minute English, but make a plan. So if you want to do it every day during a week and just 10 minutes, you can say, okay, I will listen to this podcast for 5 minutes, and today my activity will be dictation. And then maybe tomorrow, my activity will be summarizing the main idea. So if you don't have a lot of time, maybe you could just listen to one section of a podcast or one short podcast, but give yourself a task. I think that's really important. So listening, just listening will help a lot because it's more exposure. But I think giving yourself a task to do when you're listening.
Okay.
Yeah, and that is different each day as well, because then what you're doing is you're developing different skills if you're listening. So it could be a dictation. It could be I will listen to 1 minute of the podcast. I will listen to it 3 times again, and I will dictate word for word 3 times in that 1 minute.
Okay. What do you think about listening songs? Listening songs is a good exercise?
Yeah, it's great. Sometimes the words can change pronunciation or intonation to fit the rhythm, right, or the harmony. But I think it's really good, a great idea, yeah. Because it's fun, and if it's music you like, it's not like a task, is it? It's not like work.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
So lyrics training is a good app that was mentioned. So yeah, try it out. I think you can get it on the Google Play Store or the Apple Store also. I think it's no cost also. It's free.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Ben, are you uploading the slides to Edmodo?
Yes. Yeah. I'll do that. I'll make sure that they will be uploaded. Yeah.
Hi, Ben.
Was that you, Dulce, who
No.
had a question?
No,
Okay.
now it's me. No worries. I would like to double check that the first link that you shared with us about the BBC podcast, it's not working, or I don't know if I could be.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
could you
strange.
please reshare?
Yeah. Let me send it again. 6-minute English.
Yeah, it was the first at the beginning.
Okay, let me put it here. Yeah. Any other questions there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I discovered that when you are listening a song, and after that you read the lyrics, it's amazing that. But you said to yourself, but this word is why I couldn't identify this word. It sounds so different only without know the lyrics. So uh, 7 or 10 years ago, Penguin Readers sold audiobooks when where you have the book and you have the audio.
Okay. Yeah.
And you are following the text and the pronunciation at the same time. Right now, that has changed because the technology has changed this kind of books or audio books. Is there any website or any help to have both text and audio?
That's a good question. I haven't come across one that has, like a place that has like lots of stories or free stories. Let me see if I can find one. But I haven't found a good resource. Does anyone else know a good resource for audiobooks?
Yeah. Right now, in the latest version of Kindle
Yes.
by Amazon, you are able, if you just buy the Kindle book, I mean the book for reading, in the latest version of the app of Kindle, the version that you can install on your PC, you are able to read at the same time that you are reading, reading the letters and the paragraphs. You can say to the app that the app reads. So this could be an option. You just need to buy the Kindle book, and the Kindle book, the book, and you can find books for 10. The books starts in $7, between $7 and $20. It depends on the book. But the good thing is you can read, and at the same time you can listen. But what I have found is you need do that in the PC, and you need to download the latest version of the Kindle by Amazon.
Okay, but I have a Kindle, but I can't find yet the sound part. I don't know if one Kindle, one device Kindle, or the ancient kingdoms had
you
sound.
need to no, Luis Eduardo.
I need the app.
You need to download the latest version of the Kindle. I mean, in order to read a book in Kindle, you have several ways. One of those is reading the book since your Kindle device. The Kindle device is something like this, a little bigger. It's like a tablet.
Tablet.
A tablet. I think you have a Kindle, but also if you take your computer and you say download Kindle by Amazon, you can download to your computer, and since your computer, you can access the books that you have already inside your Kindle device. And since the Kindle application that you install in your PC, you are able to read and hear the book at the same time. So,
so it's just
downloading it.
Oh yeah, so it's just accessing on your PC and Kindle. Okay.
It is what I have found some weeks ago.
Super
I didn't know
nice.
that.
Aura, you are now Kindle technical support.
Yeah.
We're all going to be asking you questions.
I just found that
Aura.
a couple of weeks ago.
Thank you, Aura. That's very helpful. Yeah.
That's
my response was I haven't found any good free resources, but if you already have a Kindle, which a few people do, then that's a good option. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't need the Kindle device. You can do it since your PC.
From your PC, okay.
From your PC, yeah.
Well, yeah, audiobooks are great as well, enjoyable, and you can see the words and listen at the same time. Yeah, okay. Yes. But just to come back then, like some last thoughts about improving listening. I didn't cover the different types of listening because we might have to listen for details sometimes, but also we might need to listen for the main idea. So listen for detail, dates, addresses, that kind of thing. Listening for gist is what we call like getting the main idea. So maybe you didn't understand everything, but you know what they're talking about. Ideally, you would practice both of them, right? But if you want to focus your practice, and that could be a good idea, this could also be something that you incorporate into a listening strategy that you do, in your listening week. If you had time to do listening 3 times during the week, then you could do different types of listening. So listening for detail, so weather forecasts, taking down the main information, radio station weather reports, traffic info, that kind of thing. Sports reports as well, scores, key information like scorers. So those could be good ways to practice listening for detail, because in these types of things, you're going to hear a lot of data. And listening for gist, or listening for the main idea, could be news story, TED Talks. So it could be summarizing different sections of the TED Talks, podcasts. So, summarize them in your own words. What is the podcast's opinion? What things does it mention? Also maybe debates, like identify main arguments, supporting evidence. So those are good examples of ways that you can focus your listening for catching the main idea rather than detail. But ideally, you would practice both as well. So those are 2 types of listening, and then some strategies that we talked about also. So different ways that you can do listening, different things that you can do before. But I think active listening is really good as well. It's more challenging and probably a bit more fun as well, even if you do it on your own, because you're interacting more. And it's probably more rewarding when you get it right as well. So some things that I hope will be practical and not too time consuming. But I also hope that it's, if you do listening practice frequently, that it's given you some ideas on different ways that you can practice. And just before I finish, I mentioned that there was a website where you can practice for IELTS. This is really good because there are loads of practice tests. So even if you're not practicing for the exam or preparing for the exam, it could be good to get extra practice at challenging listenings. Yeah. And these are full tests, so it's the same with the Cambridge ones. And yeah, if you're looking for like classroom type listening exercises, you can try that. And you can apply the same strategies that we looked at also. So if you are practicing for an exam though, that's going to be really useful. Well, we're past 7 now, so I think we'll have to call it a night. But yeah, I hope those things have been useful, everyone. And try those new things out that we talked about over the next coming weeks. But until the next time, take care. Have a lovely evening, and it's been a pleasure to see you all.